Welcome Holliston people, family, friends, neighbors. We're very glad to have you all join with us this evening in this first of our series of community education events that's focused on us as a community talking together about how to continue to build inclusive, safe, and supportive Holliston public schools. My name is Robert Principe. I'm a Holliston resident. I have family members who have graduated from Holliston Public Schools. I have family members who are currently in the Holliston Public Schools, and it's my pleasure to be here, be part of this, and get us started this evening. Our topic tonight is exploring how SEL, social emotional learning, and DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, enhances our children's learning and safeguards their mental health. And this event, as with all the events to follow, is our effort to strengthen the school community collaborative partnership to build the best, schools we can, and that need to be inclusive, need to be safe, and need to be supportive in our town, in Holliston. It's wonderful we're here gathered to have the conversation. And quite frankly, we've talked a lot about this. Schools cannot do this alone. So the fact that this community school partnership is being worked on is just wonderful. I'd like to recognize the number of community groups that have come together to make this happen. A bunch of good folks in Holliston working for a while with the Holliston Public Schools, the Holliston PTO, Mindshare, the Holliston Special Education Parent Advisory Council known as CPAC, Holliston Youth and Family Services, and the Diverse Holliston Education Subcommittee. Thanks to everyone for doing this work and putting this together. In line with this, and the goal, one of the goals of the series is to have these conversations that we as a community, first recognizing the diversity that makes up all of Holliston's children, all of Holliston's families, to come together and build our capacity to have open, respectful, effective dialogue regarding these kinds of issues, social emotional learning, diversity, equity, inclusion issues that relates to our kids' health and well-being, essentially. The better we can do this, the more we can ask ourselves the questions, what can we learn from each other? And using the valuable information that comes to strengthen our work as a community to build inclusive, safe, and supportive community as a whole, and certainly the schools. So let's do it, Holliston. Really happy to be here. We have Dr. Susan Kuska, who's here to say hi for a moment. Dr. Kuska, thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you for inviting me tonight. I'm really excited to be able to partner with such great community members. I've worked with all of our panelists, and as Robert said, we can't do this work alone. A lot of you know the work that we've been doing on the school side, led by Director of SEL and Equity, Mr. Vernay. And to have all of you partnering with us in the community is going to make us even more successful, because the students and the community will get the message that we take this work seriously. One of the things I'm really excited about, and I want to share with you, is just that our strategic plan is coming to an end. We are just completing our draft 5-year plan, and you will see when we present that on May 5th at the school committee, and I hope people are able to come see that and hear that. We're going to be talking about how we're embedding SEL and equity work within that 5-year plan. You'll see that strategically embedded in all the work that we do over the next 5 years. So I'm excited to share that with you on May 5th. I won't be able to stay for the entire event tonight because I do have to attend another meeting, but thank you all for all your work, and I'm excited to continue this partnership together.
Thank you, Dr. Kuska. We're excited to be here. So we're scheduled for 3 or 4 hours. I'm kidding. We're here till 7:45 to have this conversation, and we're really excited to have the panelists. And I'd like to introduce Karen Archambault, who is the assistant principal at Holliston Public Schools. I actually had my first opportunity to meet Karen in the conjunction with this project, and I'm really happy to have had that opportunity. She's graciously offered to moderate tonight's panel. So Karen, thank you so much. And we are now in your good hands.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. I'm going to talk a little bit about the agenda for tonight is I'll have the panel introduce themselves. We have some guiding questions I'm going to pose to the panel. And after they talk about those questions and respond, We'll have some time for some question and answers at the end of that time of the panel discussion. On the bottom of your screen, you'll notice there's a button for Q&A. So we are taking questions through Q&A. I will see the questions, and then depending on timing, we'll probably hold them till the end. We'll pose the questions at the end. Depending on how many questions we get, we may not be able to get to everyone's question, but obviously everything's important. So we will take the time at the end to export the questions, or if something specific individual, we'll make sure that somebody reaches out to you and is able to respond to your question accordingly. So to start off with, I'm just going to go usual. I'm sure people are well familiar with Zoom at this point. I'm going to go around and have the panelists introduce themselves. So I'm going to go around my screen. So Robert, tell us about yourself.
Oh, I'm done talking. I'm a community member. Let's get to the panelists. Go right ahead. I just was here to do a little introduction piece as part of the community groups. Go right ahead. Thank you, Karen.
That counts for a lot. Jerry L. Vernay.
Hi, everyone. Jerry L. Vernay. I'm the Director of Social Emotional Learning and Equity. I'm just excited to be here, and I just appreciate everybody's time to coming together to really build a community effort for this work. And thank you for everybody who came today to just be a part and lean in today. Thanks.
Eva Stahl.
If Eva can find her unmute, there we go. My name is Eva Stahl, and I have two hats on tonight. I'm a parent of 3 children, one who's now in college, 2 are currently in the school system. During my day job, my expertise is in child health, around trauma, mental health, and doing public policy and advocacy around those issues. I'm really excited to be here tonight. Thanks.
Sarah Fitzgerald.
Hi, I'm Sarah Fitzgerald. I'm here for the Holliston PTO. I'm the president. I'm also the parent of 3 children. I've got one in 4th, one in 8th, and one in 9th. So I've spanned elementary, middle, and high school, which is interesting and fun. So I'm glad to be here as well.
Allegra Dennehy. I hope I said that right. Sorry.
Did. Perfect. Hi, everybody. Allegra Dennehy. I am co-chair of the Holliston CPAC, which is the Special Education Parent Advisory Council. Also live in Holliston and have 3 children, 17, 15, and 13, which is also so much fun.
Barbara Ryan.
There it is. Good evening. I'm Barbara Ryan. I have a 6th grader and a 10th grader. Have been in Holliston for a couple years now, and I help to lead the Holliston PTO Mindshare with Sarah. And just a pleasure to be here. And thank you so much to this team for coming together, and lots more conversations to come. Thank you.
And last but definitely not least, Jackie Weiner.
Oh, you saved the best for last.
Yes, I did.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jackie. I'm the Director of Holliston Youth and Family Services. If you haven't heard about us, we are a municipal department within the town of Holliston. And we have a mission to provide counseling and social services to Holliston residents and to promote behavioral health and wellness for the entire community. We have a free mental health clinic available for any Holliston resident. We also have a court diversion program and many other initiatives that we work on throughout the community. And I am very excited to be a part of this tonight. Thanks for having me.
And of course, Dr. Kutzka, who already introduced herself. I just didn't want it to go unrecognized as she is with us. So our first guiding question for the panel is, we would like to know, all of us would like to know, how do you feel that SEL, social emotional learning, and DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, come together as it relates to enhancing our children's learning and safeguards their mental health? And anyone who would like to start or chime in, please go right ahead.
Well, I took the time to unmute, so I guess I'll go first. So I think that for me, and I'm going to be wearing 2 hats today. So I'm wearing the Director of Social Emotional Learning and Equity hat, but I'm also wearing a parent hat and a community member hat as well. So as I think about that, they all go together in the cross section. And what I mean by that is social emotional learning really is about learning skills. And when I mean learning skills, it's about learning skills on how to really build, specific knowledge and skills around developing healthy identities, managing emotions, achieving personal and collective goals, showing empathy for yourself and for others, maintaining positive relationships, and be able to make responsible and caring decisions. But there is no way to really achieve this if we as a school district, if we as a community are not building inclusive spaces for kids to actually practice this. We need to build inclusive spaces we need to build and honor the diversity within our community and inclusive spaces where kids get to practice these SEL skills. We want to bring kids in where kids belong so they can really fulfill their identity, right? So when I say identity, we also know that students throughout their education as they get older, they start to build their own identity. Identity formation is essential for all kids to live a healthy and productive life. But to get there, kids have to develop those SEL skills and be in spaces where they feel that they belong and that are inclusive and open to them. That is essential. So if we really want to build a healthy Holliston, a healthy school district, all of this work must come together. It cannot be siloed, right? They directly impact each other. And as a parent, I want our kids to develop healthy identities to build a healthy community.
So I would just piggyback on that, Jeriel, and say that, all the research tells us that when kids have these skill sets, right, when we think about, and when we talk about SEL, it's kind of sometimes feels like it's not tangible, but sometimes it's simple when you're as a parent thinking about when your child has an issue or loses their temper and has a moment that you hold their hands and you talk about breathing deeply. And part of that, and that's called regulation. And part of that is bringing down your blood pressure and giving yourself a moment. And so that's part of a skill set that we're teaching children from a very young age. And we want them to sort of expand that skill set. If this SEL is not being something that's done to them, it's something that we're doing as a community because we want to replicate those practices around our kitchen tables. But we also want to make sure that our kids also feel safe in being in their community at large. So, as a parent of a child that is questioning their identity and sort of figuring out their own orientation in the world, like I want my child to feel safe wherever they go in the community. So it's about creating those skill sets, but also making sure that we're all walking the same walk together.
Yeah, I'll piggyback off of things you both are saying here, and that these are issues that sometimes aren't easy to bring to light. When we talk about, having a kid who's questioning their identity, when we talk about suicidal ideation, when we talk about cutting, when we talk about racial profiling in the community or racial discrimination within the community, these are things that we don't like to talk about. And we have a culture sometimes, and I think this is true for this town, of silence. And silence at home can actually make mental health issues much, much, much worse. So if you have a kiddo at home who's dealing with anxiety, depression, let's just, those two things, there's many other issues other than those two things, but we hear about these two things the most. The less we give voice to those things at home and the more we sweep under the rug or we avoid those issues, very often our kids suffer, because they have an internal voice that is not being shared and it's not being heard. And I'm a big believer in not bottling these things up and kids not having to go at it alone. And so I think it's really important that we focus on connection, making sure that kids feel connected. I'm a big proponent in September for guidance counselors to look at their roster, look at all the students. What student do you not know? What student do you not have a connection to? Make it your job to find that student and have a connection with that kid. I think that's incredibly important, not only in a school, but in a community, because I know that relationships are ultimately the building blocks of identity. And so the more we can have an outlet, the more creative ways we can give kids voice to how they're feeling, I feel strongly that we'll have better outcomes. Kids won't be turning to substance use. They won't be turning to cutting and suicidal ideation. We'll have less trauma in the community. We'll have less crisis in the community. And so I think that these things truly are money in the bank. They really do. The cost benefit analysis, the more kids get SEI, SEL, and DEI in school, the less need we'll have for mental health, outpatient, inpatient, all those other resources that come along with it. And so this is a protective factor that could really make a difference in a young person's life.
And I just want to say that I love that language of protective factor, Jackie, because it's like wrapping our kids in a blanket. You know, it's such an important part of this work, but it's also, I think it's important for people to understand that it also gets imprinted on their physical self. And so what that means is that their health outcomes later on in life, when we're talking about things like you wouldn't even imagine are connected to toxicity or stress or trauma, like heart disease, right? Those things matter, and they matter over the long term. And so what we're doing now is called upstream. Like we're stopping things before they get harmful and before they hurt our kids, both in their mental sort of, you know, the issues of prevalence, particularly during COVID, when we've seen the spike in anxiety and depression, right? But also that we're building these protective factors. So we're protecting them for the long run.
I'll give you recent research on this. There was a thought that during COVID that we would see an uptick in child abuse, that kids would be home, they would be isolated, they would not be with their families, they would not be with their school families, and that kids would not have eyes on them. And that's not to say that child abuse cases, domestic violence issues, that those things didn't increase in the community. But what we actually saw was COVID, pandemic, unemployment, rent and mortgage relief assistance, all these assistance programs that were put in place, actually for the families that were dealing with active, you know, we're in the system, we're dealing with these issues, they didn't have high cases of child abuse during COVID because of all the resources that we put in place over the course of COVID. And so when I think about all the resources we have here as a school system, as a community, to protect children's mental health, to protect their identities, to protect, you know, the culture of the school, to make it safe, you're really thinking about these outcomes being quite positive in the long run. Just further to your point, Eva, around that.
That was a great segue to our next question. So our next question was, you know, what are some of the challenges around SEL or DEI? And I would actually say opportunities and challenges based on kind of what you were just sharing that you've observed. And what are some good strategies of response that we can do as a community?
I feel like we have to rock, paper, scissors.
I guess I'll just
unmuted.
I'll answer that question with a question. And is SEL enough? You know, is it enough? Are we doing enough? Is it enough for kids just to be getting it in school?
Well, one of the things, as you say that, I think that's, this is both like a semi-answer and it's a plug for the future. So what I mean by that is we're going to be having future dates, and part of that, another date is going to be around navigating the social internet and screen time. And I want to bring that up because when you asked about challenges, I put on my parent hat, and I also put on my community member hat and my educational leader hat. And it's a real struggle to figure out how to parent and how to support my 12-year-old, my 9-year-old, when they're bombarded by messages on social media. In many ways, my son and my daughter are engaging with their peers through the computer. I don't find kids at the park shooting hoops anymore, problem solving, figuring it out. I don't see that happening in maybe ways that I experienced life where I figured it out face to face with peers, right? And you had conversations, you had dialogue. There's less of that happening. And there's a part of it that's scary to me as a parent, which even brings more urgency for me at the school to think about how do we help kids practice those skills? What does that look like? And what does that look like as a parent to help my kid navigate this new space? The pandemic thrusted us forward 10 years in over a year and a half. And I'm not sure how to best support my kid and how to help them navigate all of those messages around gender or race or who am I or my identity or as an athlete, all of those things. And I'm trying to figure that out, just like I think everybody here on this call is, and just like I think the parents at home are. So that's a challenge. But it's a challenge that I think as schools, we're trying to figure out how do we help that. And I think that that's also why we're here today, is to think about some of that. So I'll step back, but that is a challenge I see to the work, is how do we help? How do we help?
And then I would just say also, Jeriel, that I think another challenge is moving systems is hard. And we're trying to sort of reimagine connectedness as a community as a whole. And we're using schools as sort of a launch pad to do that through promoting SEL and DEI. So that's really hard. There are a lot of players. You know, Jackie and I participated in something as a part of our substance use work, where we engaged a whole host of stakeholders in the community to get feedback on how we could create a stronger community that would reduce substance use and the prevalence of these issues in our community. And it was a really interesting process to have conversations with business owners about substance use and youth. And there's often not a space and a place to have those conversations. And it requires sort of a certain level of activism that we're not accustomed to. And sort of coming out of the COVID isolation, it's just going to take a lot of work to refine those skills. But I think it's also an important moment to pause and just remind ourselves as adults and leaders in the community that there's no going back, that we have to reimagine connectivity, and that we need kids to be a part of that conversation because they're ahead of us. And so, you know, trying to pry them back to what was before, that ain't happening. So part of it too, and I think this work, so much of it falls back to all of us to be participants. So whether you're a business owner, whether, you know, you're part of the police force, whether you're a church leader, that this really takes all of us. And that's just hard. It's hard work. And people need to keep showing up for it.
Karen, I got to jump in. So thank you, Eva, for talking about the kids not need to take a part. I mean, like you're pointing out, they know this stuff, right? The virtual world. And Karen, I mean, as a school administrator and anybody else for that matter, you know, how do we tap the kids as resources, to Eva's point about their own health and understanding what health is in that space? If that makes sense. How do we tap them since they know what they know and they ain't going backwards, like Eva says, right?
Well, I will tell you, in some of the work that's happening on the committees, there are student involvement at the high school. And then the work Jeriel is doing, each building, if you will, my understanding is I'm part of the middle school, looking at the No Place for Hate, safe and supportive environments. And there were 2 8th grade students there in a meeting today, and they were courageous and thoughtful, and it just gave me a lot of hope. And these conversations give me a lot of hope, because there's a lot of fear around the topic or the conversation. What is it? Do I just hope they learn something? So as a parent, I know everyone has a place at the table. Everyone has a voice at the table, is my hope. And these connections, like these events, I think are helpful. And then just, again, having the courage, like these 2 8th graders today, to say, you know, I do have a teacher I can go to, and I don't really know how that happened. I just trusted them. And so after school, sometimes my friends and I will just go talk to them. And there were a couple instances just from these 2, and I can't imagine these are isolated incidents or students who are the only students who can do that. So my hat is off again through these times. You will never go back to what was before, as Eva just said. And I think our educators have been there for our kids. And I appreciate that. I think to your point, Jeriel, this digital what feels like 24/7 Chromebook. I'm probably from a little bit of a different era, but how do we navigate that as parents, as people? I think my pediatric nurse practitioner brain says these are developing, evolving brains. How is it impacting sleep? We know that, disrupted sleep affects mental health. We know different environs affect mental health. Screen time affects dopamine receptors and mental health. The good, the bad, and everything in here. So I think these are, again, this is a hopeful jumping point tonight with this collective group and with our community members. And together, I think we just keep moving this along. And, 10 steps forward, maybe 2 steps back, or, vice versa. But I think we keep going. And so I'm very appreciative. And again, figuring out day by day with my own children, but grateful to be here in this community where they have felt very supported, where the schools have done that from my perspective, my personal experience. And I thank everyone for that.
And I'll just jump in really quick and piggyback off of that a little bit. When the question is, what are some roadblocks or some things that might get in the way of this work? And I apologize if you can hear my daughter in the background. She's inadvertently joining this presentation by blasting Moana. But in any event, I think one of the roadblocks, as I see it, is us, is adults, is parents, is community members who kind of just remember what we went through as kids and kind of think like, well, we went through this and, everything's fine. And if we got through it, then, they can get through it. But I think to everyone's point, it's a different time when we're talking about social media, when we're talking about 24 access to any information at the tip of your fingers at your phone. There's it's a different time and kids are going through different things. And I think as parents and community members, we need to acknowledge that and understand that our experiences aren't their experiences. And then another thing that I will add to that is an opportunity is to understand that the kids want to learn. They want to be connected. They want to be involved. And I'll share a really positive experience I had with my daughter, who's 13. She is nonverbal. She has autism. She has epilepsy. She was in a second grade class at Holliston Public Schools. And I went in as a mystery reader and spoke to the class. And I read a book about that I bought at a Temple Grandin presentation. And it was about a little girl that had autism. And after I read the book, I shared with the class some of Tessa's interests. And they were shocked that here's this little girl that's their same age, can't necessarily communicate like they do, but she has many of the same interests that they do. So it's about us bringing opportunities to them, answering some of their questions, and helping them make those connections with some of their peers that they might not necessarily think to do that or be able to do that or know how to do that.
So Allegra, I just have to smile and thank you for sharing that, because I'm so glad that Mystery Reader is still happening.
So,
you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yes, it was a great opportunity.
It's a great practice. We should not give up.
I have to admit, I love being the mystery reader. To your point, though, so you guys keep doing a wonderful job. You all keep doing a wonderful job segueing into the next question/ideas, which are, I think this is probably what a lot of the attendees who are hopefully on the line today, waiting with bated breath to hear about. But what are some steps that can be taken at home to build a greater understanding of the value of SEL and DEI to enhance our children's learning and safeguard their mental health? And what are the steps that can be taken as a community, as at large, as a whole, So even if there's some people online who don't necessarily still have children at home, but how can they help, or don't have any children at home, but want to help and help in the community?
So I'll just jump in really quick. A tagline that we have at home is make space, give grace. And it's sort of, I think that what we can be doing at home is understanding how the building blocks of equity and SEL show up in our own homes, around our dinner table, how we treat each other as family members, how we listen. So much of this is about creating safety to listen and giving kids agency so they feel heard. So I think that, as you think about how you parent and run your household, that you hold on to those tenets and know that you are practicing SEL in your own home. And that's what most people strive to do, because they're common sense, emotional intelligence, building blocks. When it comes to community, I think that, looking for ways to be responsive when there's outreach from the schools, not just to buy an ad in a program, but to think about how you engage in school events and how you can be connected to kids in various ways. We talk a lot in other coalition spaces about how we need more opportunity for youth. I think something that the community can think about, if you sit in a position, like if you're a select person or if you sit on a committee, that you're thinking about how you're bringing the lens of social emotional health and equity to our budget, to our decisions. What do we invest in? How are we supporting our community? And specifically, how are we supporting the development of our children? And that we're not just talking the talk, but we're putting the dollars into not just about our school system, right? Do we have recreational spaces? Do we have spaces that promote healthy living? Are we supporting the needs of our families to keep them economically stable? So, bringing the lens to that work is important. And then I would just say participate. We got a lot of slots open on committees. We need a lot of people to continue to show up and do this work, whether it's through a school committee, as the, amazing people on this call do every day, or if it's stepping up into a committee position to help run our town. It's really valuable and it matters.
Just to piggyback what Eva said, sorry, Jackie, I'll just go quick. It does begin at home, whether it's role playing, hard conversations, but I think it begins with listening. What I've learned is, how was your day? Good. So it's, tell me something that I would only know when I walked through the halls or I sat in your classroom with you. So I get a little bit more on that. But I do just try to send my kids out every day, and I have a mantra, and I hope it's a tape in their head that just sticks. Who knows? Parenting sometimes is, a bit of a crapshoot, but it's be good to yourself today and be good to someone else, right? It's that notion of taking care of yourself and doing good for others and honoring that. So that's just a little something I do in my own home, but it's also those open-ended questions, which I'm getting better at. And I get maybe 2 sentences versus a yes and no, but that's showing that interest and listening. And then if things are on the news or, how did you hear about that? Well, I saw it on YouTube. So then it's like, oh gosh, okay. So, it's just always circling to tell me more about that. How did that make you feel? I'm by no means a psychologist, and like everybody, each day feels a little bit different, and I'm doing the best I can. But I think just that acknowledgement, that listening, and sending them out the door with some confidence and kindness each day. At least that's what we try to practice in my home.
I just have to say that I feel like I'm on The View right now, having I wish I had a cup of coffee right now, because I feel like what we've created even in this space has been quite nice, just in terms of the ability to popcorn from person to person, and share kind of our insights. And so I'm just adding a little bit of my perspective here on this. And I will say that as the director of Holliston Youth and Family Services, I have really tried to increase social services within our department. So I'm excited to share that we have been able to apply ARPA money, which is the American Rescue Plan money that the state gives each town, to be able to hire another part-time social worker. So I'm incredibly excited about being able to offer that and provide more resources to the community, whether it's, service connection, group work in the community, more individualized support, being available to be on panels like this. I don't think we cannot throw enough money at these issues. And which is why my question was, is SEL enough? And I would say it's never enough. These issues are never enough. We need to be doing more. I am the co-chair of the Holliston Drug and Alcohol Awareness Coalition, which is what Eva was speaking to a moment ago. And we held a successful stakeholder retreat where we identified the root cause. Some of the root causes of substance use. We took a deep dive in the data. We looked at rates of depression. We correlated it with low self-esteem, silence around mental health issues, stigma issues, aggression, bullying. We looked at all those things and we were able to identify areas that we need to focus on. And so part of what I am starting to do a little bit more of is work with all these different stakeholders so that we can have more knowledge of what we're all working towards, because silos, those are really hard. When we all work in our own department, in our own sector, and we're not cross-pollinating on each other's coalitions and initiatives, we can't do this work siloed. And so I think one of the biggest areas and steps we can take is just continue these conversations together and align our dollars so that we're all working towards a goal. I think that we can all benefit from having more funds, but if we're all recreating the same thing, that's not helpful either. And so my biggest thing is breaking down those silos and working together. And so that's from a macro sort of perspective on what we could be doing. But as a family, if you're sitting here and you're wondering, what do I do with this information? How do I bring it back home? I would say modeling is probably one of the best tools you can use as a parent, whether your child is 4 years old or 14 years old. We have to model for them what we're asking of them, which means that we have to question our own biases, unconscious bias, and our own feelings that maybe we haven't worked out yet. And I think that that's incredibly important. Dinner time is so helpful. I love giving that as a homework exercise to families I work with. We have these really nice things. They're called tabletop chat boxes. You can find them on Amazon, but you can honestly recreate your own if you Google this and pull a little chat pack out and start a conversation. You'd be surprised how much your kids are absorbing about what's going on around them, how much insight they have, how intelligent and articulate they can be. And they have a lot to share. And so I think that talking is so important. They're listening. They're going to tell you they're not listening. They're going to show you they're not listening, but I promise you, they hear you. I also like getting in cars with kids over 13 and driving them, especially when that parallel process of talking to them face to face doesn't quite seem to be working. Take your teen on a long drive. They will spill every little detail of their life to you. It is my hidden secret, is to drive with your teen.
So are we good with time, Karen? I could jump in? Okay.
We are absolutely good with time. Go for it.
All right. So, one of the things that I wanted to share is that, one of the things that came to mind when I was thinking about this and hearing this, and I really love the quote, "Make space, give grace." I really appreciate that, Ava. In some ways, I think that I may not use the same words, but I try to practice a similar piece. I acknowledge that I impact how my kids see the world, right? So how my kids are viewing the world or how they view themselves has to do with the fact of what I've taught them, what ingredients I've kind of been bringing to the table every day. But I also try to help them think about another perspective or help them think about perspective taking, right? How might someone else in your community understand the same thing? How does someone else feel? Or help them understand how's your circle of friends looking at this issue? Because I want my kids to not just see the world from their eyes, but try to look at it from a global perspective and a community perspective. What we're talking about is that we are a greater community if we as a whole are healthier together. So I equally want my children, and I want I want all of our kids in our schools to be able to see themselves to be the healthiest self, but also to see the community as one that they can impact, right? When we think about what schools do, we try to build dialogue into classrooms. We try to bring a richness to the curriculums that kids are reading, with different identities and different stories from different parts of the world, to different ways that we tell stories. And that matters because we want kids to be able to see those different perspectives in conversation and in context to themselves. So if the question is, what can I do as a parent? For me, it's help our kids see different perspectives, not just from the ones that I help my kids create, right? I acknowledge my kids are mini-me's and my wife, my daughter is a mini of her, right? But I also want them to see their friends' perspectives. And if a friend has a different perspective, why is that? What may have experienced their life that they have a different way that they see the world? And that's okay too. And how does that make sense to you as a kid? So at schools, this is something we try to do all the time. And I try to take it home as well and try to kind of continue to kind of do that with my kids.
I love that. I was going to chime in with one thing, which I was going to say, I probably should chime in, but taking an angry stance. And as Jackie was saying, just from a professional opinion, love the driving, always be the driver. You would not believe what your child will tell you in the car when you're driving, but just come from a place of inquiry. What makes you think that? And then silence. And you'd be surprised what your child will tell you. But sorry, Eva.
Not at all. I just, Jerry, I'll just raise something that just wanted me to circle back and remind ourselves of, why the work we do is important. And whether it's in our home, our community, or in our school. And I think that, circling all the way back, right? Kids are hurting. And I think we just need to name that. And that COVID really was harmful, and it was not equally harmful. And so, a lot of kids felt it more than others. I think particularly some populations that already felt isolated and excluded. It was particularly harmful. And just naming kids with special needs in particular, that, lost access to really needed services and supports during that time period. So I just, I think we have a long road to really understand the implications of that, but that it just makes the work that we do really urgent.
Thank you, everyone. We have come to the part of our venue where we're going to take the question and answer, or program, excuse me. And so we do have a question, and feel free, whoever it may be, a Jerry, I'll direction. The superintendent, I believe, had to jump off. So it's somewhat that sort of a question, but the person is stating representation matters, being able to connect matters, having a community matters. What is the school doing to bring in more staff and people that come from cultures that are similar to them? I would actually expand that to be community, not just schools, kind of thoughts overall. How can we expose students or different people in our community to more people that look like them?
So I'll jump in because the question said schools, but I also think that question being around a community one is so important. So one of the things that I just want to say is that, in Massachusetts, in education, we have a staff shortage across the board. But with that being said, part of my role and part of what I'm hoping is all of our role is to think about how do we recruit and make and encourage people to come to our community? What's going to make us special? And when we talk about recruiting and diversifying our staff in on all of the ways that we can imagine that, part of that is going to be us creating a community that our staff want to come to. When we think about staff, and not only when they come, but that stay, oftentimes what staff say is they feel connected, they feel empowered, and they feel that they're part of a community. That means us creating that within a school, but that also means creating that within a community. This call right here is a representation of what I think people who want to come to a rich and lively school community would want to see happening. Groups and opportunities where people have voice, people want to see happening. So, you know, from me and from my perspective, being new to Holliston, this is my first year, I'm looking to see how can we make Holliston the choice above any other choice? And how do we also make sure that we're doing the best that we can do to recruit as diversely as we can? That might mean thinking about different ways that we do recruit. Maybe not just the standardized ways that we're competing with every other school system. So as I say that, you know, I'm going to be hoping that the people on this panel, the people on this call, and anyone in the community who has ideas about that, I'd love to hear about them from the school side, because we have to do something different. We have to do something different to stand out, to say, why Holliston? Why our community? And I really believe that what we're doing today is one of those ways that we do say, why our community, right? Because we take this work not just seriously, but passionately, a place where people want to come to. So I'll step back, because obviously what I'm saying is I don't necessarily have the answer, but what I do have is the passion to say, let's figure out a different way of doing this.
Jeriel, I'm going to piggyback as a community member and as a white male in Holliston, in terms of your discussion related to attracting more racial, ethnic, cultural diversity and other identities, certainly, right? Just to say, and in my experience, to your point, is that in that space, folks from diverse backgrounds look to see communities, no matter what their identity is, doing some work to make, as you point out, the community attractive to what they bring. So it's not, time and time again, doing work at Providence College, you don't just bring in diverse populations and say, you know, good luck. It's about individuals feeling that what they bring is then going to be used as tapped as a resource to say, hey, what can you tell us about us becoming a greater inclusive community, right? So it's that work in progress piece. You know, I remember a Black woman, admission counselor in a school. She would go to the Cape every summer. She knew if her other African-American parents would say to her, the school was doing the work they needed to do. That's what they wanted to know. They knew they weren't going to eliminate every issue of race in the school environment. But the school was active to try to build out a more open. So I think a bunch of folks have said silence is a bad thing about some of the challenges around differences, for example, in racial, cultural, and ethnic diversity in a predominantly white environment like Holliston. But we can work it just like any other community. The point is to do the work and keep doing the work.
So I'm going to practice something, modeling here, called comfortable silence, to see if anybody else would like to add their thoughts, give them a minute to formulate some thoughts. Okay, at this time, we don't have any additional questions. If there are a number of attendees on, so it is the time where we're doing question and answers. So if you need more information about something, you have a question about something someone said, definitely please type it into the Q&A portion at the bottom of your screen, and we would be happy to answer questions you might have or follow up on statements you might like to add. Okay, so we did get another question. How can community members get involved in this work and support the schools? I very much appreciate that question.
Well, I moved here in the summer of 2019, and I did want to get involved with the community. And I had then a 4th and an 8th grader, very tender ages, particularly 8th grade. So it wasn't all altruistic. I actually joined the PTO. I went to a meeting just to see what it was about and what people were involved with. And so I wanted to meet people. So the parent-teacher organization is a wonderful way to be involved, to support the schools in another way, whether it's lunchroom, outdoor, if you have a certified pet for pet therapy, the reading, there are fundraising events, there's a lot of different things, and work like this. Sarah and I leading Mindshare, we see ourselves as a connector of sorts. We do programs for parents and guardians and help to be part of this event and bringing it together, certainly not alone. But that's just one example. And I know volunteering takes time and effort, but anything you can do and just to reach out, I think the PTO is a great place to start. One perspective.
I'll jump in as well, just to say another plug for the PTO. For me, it's really nice to be able to get into the school and see what's going on, with your own eyes. And obviously the last 2 years have been very difficult to do that. And that's been, that for me, that's really been hard. But I think as hopefully things continue to get a little better, we will be planning more events. The school will hopefully be back for volunteers to come into the classrooms first, when it's optional. But that's a really nice way to get to know and see what your kids are experiencing every day. It's just a really valuable thing in my mind. And we will also be planning more, the normal events that the PTO does, chaperoning and stuff. Sometimes your kids don't want you there, but it's actually really fascinating and wonderful to see just how the kids interact. Even that alone gives you some food for conversation when the event's over. So.
Yeah, I just wanted to share, and I know, Karen, you probably have to transition soon, but one of the things I did want to share was that I know people on this call are probably sick of me asking them to join something. And people who've reached out and said, hey, how do I help? I've connected them with something. But one of the things I want to say is our schools are always looking for ways to connect. So one of the ways is to maybe even tomorrow, reach out to your school and say, I'd like to be a part of, Safe and Supportive Schools. I would love to talk about how I can help support further, DEI work, diversity, equity, and inclusion work. I'd love to see how I can best support SEL practices in our schools. Our schools are not just trying, they've been doing this work, but we're really trying to systematize opportunities where community can get involved. Right. So one direct way is to, even tomorrow, reach out to the school and say, hey, how can I join? Is there anything I can support? Reach out to me. I'd love to connect you with something, because I think for me, this work is about connecting community and schools together to do on this work. So, there's not one direct thing, but I would say there are a lot of things. And if you can't find one, either I or Jackie or Ava or Sarah or Barbara or Allegra, we can all figure out one to connect you with, right? The more we connect as community, I think the more impactful we will all become, and create the communities where people want to come to and continue to diversify our communities, as we talked about in the earlier question.
And I would just say that as someone who has always been, for the most part, a full-time working parent, the PTO was not something that could fit into my life in those moments. And so part of it is expanding your view. That's why I actually love the mystery reader, because it was that slot that you could sign up for, where you could have that experience, Sarah, of sort of being a witness to what was happening within the school walls. But I would say to broaden our definition that we talk about the importance of community. So helping schools is not just about showing up in the classroom, it's about helping the community. And there are a plethora of opportunities, endless opportunities to help out that could fit into your schedule. But I think the theme is time, and that we need people's time. And I hope that what COVID has done is helped people reorient toward looking within their communities, within their families, and that there is a real opportunity here to sort of revitalize ourselves and our community. And part of that is many people are not commuting anymore and have more time. And so I would say when you think about how you spend it, community is a good investment.
So before we move to Jeriel's closing remarks, so Jackie, you are waiting with.
I just want to let people know. I just want to let people know that the town of Holliston .us, that website that you might go on to pay your bills or water bills, actually has so much information for volunteers. So if you go to townofholliston.us in the search box and type volunteer resources, you will get a ton of information. And whatever is not on there, seek out the school, me, anybody else on here, and we'd be happy to point you in a direction you're interested in for volunteering.
Wonderful, thank you. So actually I jumped over someone. So Allegra, you have some resources that you were going to share with the group.
Yes, and actually this is the perfect segue into that, because when we're talking about, there's a couple different things. How can we help? Most of the organizations that are represented on this panel are included in this page. And this is just a very quick snapshot of the multiple resources available both in the community and, broader. Some of these are just very broad resources. And then if you contact them, then they can bring you to more specific depending on what your needs are. For example, Holliston CPAC, which I'm the co-chair for, many times people will contact us with exactly like the question was, how can I help? What can I do to support? But also if they have a specific question, and then we can kind of direct them into the right area. So I don't necessarily, need to go through every single one, but this will be available to people if they need it. And I do just want to encourage people to reach out if you have questions, concerns, if you want to learn more about social emotional learning or diversity, equity, inclusion, what that means, what you can do to help. Or if you are struggling in any way, your children are struggling in any way, there's so many resources, even just right within this community, that can be so helpful for people. And again, to me, that is part of social emotional learning, right? Like asking for help, being able to recognize that I can't do this by myself and I need some support. So this is just a very brief snapshot of some of the resources available.
And we will make the resources, it's being recorded obviously, but we'll make the resources available to everyone also afterwards. And there is, so side note, somebody typed into the Q&A, they wanted to put in a plug for, they're a part of Diverse Holliston and clearly have found that a rewarding experience. So they put that into the chat, but we are, I believe, Jeriel, you are bringing it home for us, correct?
So I'm gonna bring it slightly home, and I'm gonna pass it to Sarah. So if you're still on, please don't go, because we do have a survey that we'd like to get your feedback on. But I just wanted to share a plug for something for the future. We're gonna be coming back April 27th. We're gonna be working with the Massachusetts Aggression Reduction Center out of Bridgewater State University, and we're gonna be having them come and do a presentation on just helping our students and understanding as parents, as family members, as community members, how we can support our youth, our adolescents in dealing with social conflict, bullying, cyberbullying in our wider communities. There'll be more information to come, but please come. I think when you think about what does this work mean, no matter where you come to the conversation today, just lean in, right? Continue coming back, continue engaging, ask questions, talk with your neighbor. That's what this work's about, no matter, what experience you have with this work or not. And we really, really look forward to seeing you on the 27th. Also, these resources, we will be putting it up on our school department website. I'm almost like 95% ready to launch a safe and supportive school site on that, where we will have family resources. So I'll put these up there. I'll probably give me a couple days. We're almost there. And once again, thank you so much. And I'll hand it over to Sarah.
Great, thank you so much. I'm going to send a link right now to a survey. Hopefully everyone will get that. And this is just a survey. This session is the first part of hopefully multiple sessions. The second one, as Jeriel mentioned, will be in April. But it's really just part of a whole effort to strengthen the school community partnership. We're really just hoping to help build inclusive, safe, and supportive schools. The schools have been doing a lot of work already, but as we've said over and over, they can't do it alone. We really need the community to come and step up as well. I know that we all have such busy lives, and we truly appreciate that you've all taken the time to listen and learn more about what we're doing, as well as what resources are available. We hope that you will seek out those resources when they're needed. I just want to offer sincere thanks to everyone who helped put this presentation together. Our school administrators, Holliston Youth and Family Services, Diverse Holliston, Holliston CPAC, Mindshare. Karen, thank you for moderating, and Jeriel and Eva and Robert and Allegra and Jackie and Barbara. Really appreciate all of your input and wonderful thoughts. And then finally, a thank you to Dr. Kuska for really spearheading and setting the tone for our schools. I'm hopeful and optimistic for really good things to come for us and our community. So if you can take a minute and fill out this survey, we'd really appreciate it. The link is in the chat for you. And that's all I have. So thank you and good night.
I just want to say, if for those who didn't get a chance to log on live, it is being streamed on TV, and it will be recorded and go over, the Holliston Public Broadcasting channel. So encourage others, if you know who would benefit from, to check out when it's coming on and lean in with us all together.
Yes. Thank you. Okay.
Bye, everyone. Thank you guys so much.
Everybody. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.